Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. Also check me out on Twitch as Floyd Mason.
Hello. Welcome back, Spooks fans. We are back. It is on to book number 5, which is Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. So this one, I actually only have one single copy of it. I don't have any of, if there are the reprints of it, don't have either the 2003 or the 2007 copies. So this is the only one I got. We'll get more into it at the end, but it's got the mummy there, the red eyes. Decent cover. Kind of somewhat explains part of the story. Again, as opposed to last book, which got some points dinged for not being kind of relevant to the story, although it is technically in the story. This one's somewhat close to something that happens later. It's at least adjacent. So this book actually doesn't have too many characters in it, which is nice. It's mainly Gabe, his cousin Sari, and his uncle Ben are kind of the three main characters, plus the villain who we'll get to in a bit. But it's kind of all about them. I always knew them well because they were two of the characters in the Escape the Graveyard board game, which my brother owned as a kid, so he used to play it all the time. I think it was them, Horrorland, Ghost Beach, and maybe Monster Blood. I can't remember the fourth one. I didn't play them. I always play as Horrorland. Jerry and Terry, they're the best. So this book kicks off, and just to say, to preface this before we get through my rating and ranking, I'm a big Mummy fan. I like the old Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser ones as well. I think a lot of kids are kind of interested with that Egyptian kind of story, and the mummies. It's such a oddly unique, just kind of, I think other places did have mummies as well in that whole process, but like it's just such a this happened in this area odd thing that is just fascinating. I think for kids that mummy stories are pretty good. So smart of Stein to do one. It's kind of one of his earlier books, but we will see how well he told it. So one big thing with this book is Gabe is not a great main character. The whole first chapter is basically him whining about being thirsty. Some of the other ones we've had so far, have been great. The main characters in Welcome to the Dead House and State of the Basement. Like, I love both the characters in those. Really have a good dynamic between the siblings and kind of bickering with each other, which is realistic, but working together, which I really like. Say Cheese and Die is a group of friends, and for the most part, like, it's very realistic, right? Like, them kind of wanting to help Greg out, but being afraid to go back into the house, and then Sherry finally doing it because she's the one that disappeared and is more afraid of it. But this book, it does have a good dynamic between the two. They're often competing because they're cousins, and Sari especially likes to pick on him a bit. So that's good, but Gabe is just such a whiny character that he's definitely not one of my favorites. One big thing too, off the start of this book is like there's some weird marketing call-outs. Like right away, he's like, "Oh, I finally, with all that thirst, he finally gets a delicious Coke," and then he's like, "Oh, I'll be fine. I got my Game Boy to play." So it just feels odd. Like, you have to feel like Stein got some kind of kickback from that, where you just like maybe he was trying to appeal to the kids, possibly, but you think that possibly the fact that he did it so early in the book that it could be something, each their own, whatever. I love Game Boy. I love drinking a nice refreshing Coke, so I'm not going to complain too much, but I could have seen it possibly some people being annoyed back in the day if it's something targeted at kids and they're trying to sell them other stuff, kind of that subliminal marketing. But least the Game Boy. I think I should have a Game Boy. I got mine right here. So, it's got a nice tin box one not long ago. Pretty cool. Yeah, so it starts off, they're kind of wandering around Egypt. His parents are there. They are kind of removed Egyptian. I think he says that his parents were born in Michigan, but it's like their parents are from there. So they kind of have a connection to it. And Ben, who's also, Egyptian, a couple, parents removed, he, he's kind of taken up the whole archaeology and studying Egyptian, artifacts and things like that. So the parents have to move on to go to another city for a bit for their work, and Gabe doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay here, and so he convinces his parents to leave him with his Uncle Ben, who agrees to take him on. So they leave. He kind of hangs out in the hotel for a bit, and then Ben and Sari show up dressed as mummies and scare him. Or I think it's just Uncle Ben dressed as a mummy. But anyways, they open the door. He freaks out. They kind of tease him about it, which is a thing of like, Uncle Ben, come on, man. Like this is your nephew. He's alone in a different country, and you're super late picking him up. Maybe don't scare him, but they think it's pretty funny. So they get him. They kind of talk about it for a bit. They get some dinner, and then he takes them to see the pyramid. He's got work to do. He can't not go and take the days. And like Gabe really wants to see it. Sari's already been because she's Ben's daughter. So he's like, "Yep, I'll take you out there and we'll go see it." So they go in there, and I think Austin does a really good job at this point, kind of breaking down, how claustrophobic the pyramid is, how confusing it can be. They have to kind of go through, like little crawlways where you have to crawl through. At one point, Gabe kind of falls off the ladder, and Sari catches him to kind of show like, oh, it's it's quite dangerous. Like, anything could happen in this pyramid, and I think it's a really good job of kind of painting that scene. So he does a really, really good job there. Then they get to the main kind of area, and you meet some of the other workers, and you meet a college student there named Ahmed, who's kind of standoffish, and he's really the only one that you meet that has any relevance. The others are just kind of working, and at this point, Sari convinces Gabe that they should sneak off and explore themselves. She said she did it last time she was here. She knows how to get it. Like, all the paths lead back to this main one, and so they'll be fine. As soon as they go out, Gabe almost immediately loses Sari. You don't know if it's accidental or what's going on. So he's wandering around. He's trying to find his way back. And he finds a sarcophagus. So he opens it, and a mummy pops out, and it's, of course, Sari. So she scared him again. Again, they love to compete and talk about how scared they are. And it's like, yeah, if I was in an ancient Egyptian tomb and something jumped out at me, I'd probably be scared. Like not even that's a person, just like a bug or a snake. So at this point, she's kind of teasing him. Uncle Ben finds him. He's upset. Tells him to come back. But as they're walking back, he can see Sari whispering what happened and Uncle Ben laughing. So even though he's mad, he still thinks it's funny that his nephew's getting scared in this temple. Yeah, that's kind of the first trip to the pyramid. They set up a lot of stuff. They set up how creepy it is. They kind of set up that it's very confusing. And just, the fact that the kids will wander off and kind of get lost in it. So the next day, Ben gets a call. 2 workers have kind of come down sick. Something's going on. I think it's Ahmed, but somebody at least is talking about the curse and, opening it and finding the curse of the temple and all that. So, they're kind of like, oh, is it this curse thing? But Uncle Ben's like, no, like, just these things kind of happen. He has to go to the hospital. So he tells the kids that they were going to go to the museum, but he's like, hey, you guys have to stay here in the hotel after the hospital. We'll go another time. So just stay here. As soon as he leaves, Sari's like, well, let's go to the museum anyways. It's a couple blocks away. Not a big deal. And with these two, right, they're always kind of like almost daring each other to do stuff, and acting like the other's a coward if they don't. So they end up going. They get there no problem. They walk through the museum. Everything's fine. When all of a sudden they see Ahmed, and he just kind of looks like, they describe him as just having like a very serious look, like very kind of ominous. So they get scared and they run away. He chases them through the whole museum. He corners them. They're like, "Oh my god, like this guy's got us." And he's like, "Why are you running? What are you doing? I have a message for you. Why are you running away from me? You met me yesterday. Sorry, you've met me several times." And they're like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like we just got scared." And he's like, "I have a message from your uncle. Like he needs you to come back." And they had left a note when they left the hotel. So they're like, "Oh, like did he see our note?" And Ahmed's like, "Yeah, like he saw your note. He sent me to get you. Like you need to come back to the hotel." So they're like, "Oh, we're so stupid. Yeah, let's go." So they go with him. Even though they'd walked, he's like, "Oh, we gotta take my car. Like I left my car near here, so we'll drive it back." So they're getting a little weary about him as he's kind of leading them because it's a bit far away. He's like, "Oh, like no, we gotta get my car. I'm not leaving my car here." So they get to his car, they get in, and they're like, "Okay, cool. Like, yep, here it is, like he said it was." And then they start to realize that they're driving away from the hotel and they're driving back towards the tombs, the pyramid. So they kind of freak out. They're like, "Oh my god, we're being kidnapped." And this is where you kind of realize, and they did the fake out, which I think was a good fake out. I think the museum fake out of him chasing them and being like, "Why are you running from me? You know me. Like your uncle sent me," is a great way that like, I can't remember exactly. Like this is one I remember fairly well from being a kid, and I can't remember it now. But I have to imagine that I was like, "Oh, like, I feel stupid. Like he's fine. Like he knows your uncle." But at this point, they realize that in fact he is bad. He's trying to kidnap them. They don't really know why, but they kind of wait for a chance and a stoppage of the car, and they jump out and run away. They peel off. They're running. They realize they're kind of wandering around. They're quite lost. So there's a funny little scene where they get into a cab and they're like, "Oh, we want to go to the hotel," and the cab driver just starts laughing at them and they're like, "Oh my god, like this guy's bad too." Like, and he's like, "The hotel's right there, idiots." And they're literally across the street from the hotel. So, honestly, a kind of funny scene. I quite like that part of the book because you're like, oh, like it's a little cliffhanger of a chapter. You're like, "Oh my god, this guy's bad too," and the whole city's out. Oh no, they're just stupid, stupid kids. I think they're around like 11, 12. So totally understandable. Lost in a city, just almost been kidnapped. Like honestly, off your game a bit, but pretty funny moment in the book. So they get back, tell Uncle Ben everything that happens. One thing I like about this book as well is a lot of the other books, the parents are very much like, "Oh, like in State of the Basement," like the mom's like, "Oh, like no, things are fine," and all the other books, and like we'll get to some more that have this example, but the parents are always like, "Oh, you're imagining things." Like, no, that's not what happened. And they tell Uncle Ben, and he's me like, "Oh, like that is very serious." Which I like how they handle that in this book. Like a thing of kind of that stranger danger thing of like that is a serious thing. Like that is not. If you say somebody took you, like that is a serious thing, and I will believe you. So he doesn't really know what to do. He needs to go back to the pyramid to check on things, and he wants to leave them behind because he's like, "Oh, it's too dangerous in there." But Sari's like, "Well, what if like Ahmed knows we're staying here? Like, what if he comes here?" And he's just kind of like, "Ooh, yeah, that's a good point. I guess I have no option but to take you." So they'll go back to the pyramid, and immediately again, Gabe gets lost. It kind of built up earlier, and like the first time they went there, and he kind of gets lost. That his shoelaces always come untied, so it happens again. It's kind of a lame item, but I get it as a writing point to make the story kind of move. It happens. So they do have beepers on them, but he doesn't want to use it right away because he doesn't want to look stupid and just see if he can find them. And he ends up falling, kind of some of the ground gives out, and he falls into a chamber and lands on his beeper, and it's destroyed. So now he's really lost. He's in this chamber. There's actually a lot of mummies and tombs and even a tar pit. And he's like, "Wow, I really discovered something. This is cool." And Sari eventually ends up kind of finally finding him. She's like, "What are you doing? Like, we lost you immediately. Like, we've been looking for you. Did you forget about your beeper?" And he's like, "Hey, like, no, I fell We need to use yours, which they do to call Uncle Ben. But he's like, look at all this cool stuff I found, and he's kind of showing around. She's pretty amazed and impressed by it. Then they hear someone approaching, which they assume is Uncle Ben. Turn around, and it is Ahmed, who's found them. At this point, it starts to come out that Ahmed is kind of, his bloodline has been enacting this curse forever, and a lot of these mummies are actually, newer people. One that Ahmed proudly points out himself that he mummified. So these are people that have been getting too close to opening because they truly believe that, her grave, like basically the pharaoh or queen or whoever's in this tomb, I can't remember, princess maybe, that her tomb should not be disturbed, and that they kind of help enact the curse to stop anyone from getting too close. Which honestly, fair enough. If it's your family's heritage, it's kind of like their burial ground. I could see it. But he goes about this by murdering people. So basically, at this point, Ben also shows up, realizes what's going on. He tries to talk to Ahmed, being like, hey, like, we just need to leave. Like, it's all cool. And at one point, Ahmed gets the upper hand and knocks him out with a torch. So at this point, I can't remember exactly what he's going to do to them. He needs to wait. I think he's waiting for like the tar pit to heat up or something to heat up. So they go, okay, I'm going to put you two in this sarcophagus for a bit. I got to go do some stuff. I'll come back. And so he goes off. They're stuck in the sarcophagus. They're kind of freaking out. And then conveniently, Ben wakes up. He's like, oh, there's a secret hatch in the back of the sarcophagus that they always put in these. So I got in through it, and you can get back out. It's kind of a little, they're stuck in there, but pretty easy solution to get out. But as soon as they get out, Ahmed shows up again. Same scene as the last scene where, he's kind of like, okay, like, no, you guys know too much. Like, you have to go. But at this point, he's like, okay, like, now you're going directly into the tar pits. I'm not taking my eyes off you. It is something that Stein does a lot, is he likes to do these fake outs, but then do the exact same thing immediately after. So he's like, oh, like, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to lock you in here first. Oh, they got out. Okay, now back to that scene 3 chapters ago where now I, again, just have the 3 of you and I'm going to kill you. Sometimes it works. This one, I don't feel like it did as much. It was just kind of like, I don't know why he left them in the first place. But, at this point, this book gets into a bit of the fantasticalism, where I didn't mention at the start, but Gabe has a magic kind of mummy hand that he bought at a garage sale, and I didn't want to reveal it because it's kind of the whole ending plot point, and if I call it out, it'll make it obvious that it's important later. But he holds it up, and it somehow makes the mummies come to life, and they basically just chase Ahmed out of the room. And then they all look around after he's left, and the mummies are all just back where they were, and they're kind of like wondering, oh, did we imagine that? Like, what is happening? And that kind of deals with them. Like, he's not killed or taken away. I think he just runs off. I can't remember now. I don't think it implies that anything happened to him, that he just leaves. So it's kind of like, okay, like, he's still out there. But yeah, then it's just, the rest of the book is just them kind of having breakfast the next day, and Gabe's parents coming back, and him kind of scaring Sari a bit with it, but her showing him a little more respect for saving them. But that's kind of it. That is the book. So I, for the most part, like parts of this book quite a bit. Again, it has kind of a realistic horror for most of it, of Ahmed being a real person who believes in this curse, who is trying to get the kids. It also has some really good claustrophobic, scary parts in the pyramid. Them getting in at first, when Gabe first loses Sari. Those are very kind of scary, of like, oh, he's alone. Like, again, just very real fears, very well written. It's got a bit of the humor with the cab scene and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the ending ruins this book a bit for me. As I said, I don't really like kind of the mystical thing of it all. However, I don't mind it if it's kind of baked into the story. Something like Monster Blood, it didn't bother me as much because it's like, oh, like, they found this magical thing. There's not really an explanation at the start, but it's very, it's magical. Whereas this book kind of put the item at the start of the story, and it's like, oh, he got this hand, and then it's just at the end, all of a sudden it's magical for some reason. He happened to find a very magical item for this tomb at a garage sale in America. So it just kind of wrecked that part for me. I still quite like the story. Again, I like the mummies. I like the atmosphere he painted. So I'm still going to give this book a B. I think if the ending, I think if either they set it up that like maybe he saw the hand doing something earlier in the book and just not the fact that he had it, or if they just had like maybe, because in this one it's pretty obvious that they're moving. If it had just been like maybe something's happening, you can't really tell if something's happening, and then it's all, oh no, like everything's back to normal. Like, did we see anything or not? Where this was very clear that they interacted because the hand and they were moving. So I think if it didn't have that, it would get an A. But unfortunately, that ending is not my favorite. Now, as for the cover, so as I said, it kind of relates to the story because like the mummies do, in theory, come alive at the end. So it's got the glowing eyes of it. Like the mummies looks really cool. Sorry, it's getting some light on it. And like I like the color scheme with it. I think it works. You almost think they would have gone for like a yellow or red that seems more kind of deserty, but I actually kind of like these cooler colors because they kind of match like the stone and kind of just, I think, the darkness and dampness that I would expect in a pyramid and tomb. So yeah, I quite like this cover. I'm gonna give it an A. I think that's pretty fair. Not one of the best that's out there, but I think it serves kind of the creepiness of the story well. I think it's really well drawn, and I like the color scheme. So yeah, that's it. That is Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. A pretty good one. Again, the end falls off a bit, but certainly not bad by any means. Let's check my total ranking. Yeah, so still higher than Monster Blood, which is fair. Definitely a better book than Monster Blood in my opinion, but it's not on the same level as some of the first ones. Some of the first ones as well. I gave A's to the first two books, and they're borderline S. Like I really like them. I just didn't want to set too high of precedence right away. But maybe as I get through the series, those two will get bumped up because I quite enjoy them. I think how strong a bunch of these early books are is what really pushed it up there. But that's going to do it for this one. So up next will be Let's Get Invisible. That one I think is also a pretty big classic. When I think of like the big ones off the start, I do think that Say Cheese and Die, Let's Get Invisible, and Welcome to Deadhouse, to me, are the big three. Like, Stay of the Basement is there too. Monster Blood and Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. And I think it's because they're a little weaker. You don't hear as much about. But also, I mean, Let's Get Invisible has a very, very good TV episode. Not going to rate that, so I'll let you know. It's a pretty good one. I think it was pretty creepy. It's pretty well remembered. Yeah, we will get to that one next.
Thanks for watching. Please click to check out my other videos, like and subscribe, and come by Twitch under Floyd Mason to join my live streams.